Hi, welcome. My name's Rob, and this video is going to give you 3 tips to hopefully help your English in relation to the Word on the Street episode about Notting Hill. Now, you've probably seen the episode if you're watching this video, and even if you didn't know before the episode, I'm sure you do now that Notting Hill is famous for its carnival. It's famous for other things too, of course. A pretty successful film about 20 years ago with Hugh Grant and Julia Roberts. It's also quite a nice part of London to live in, I imagine. But it's the carnival which this episode was about. This year, unfortunately, the Notting Hill Carnival isn't going to happen, or at least not as it normally happens. And that's a shame, but obviously related to the situation we're all facing at the moment. But as usual, I'm not going to talk about the actual content of this episode in terms of the theme or the topic, Notting Hill. I'm going to talk about the language, and I'm going to give you, as I said, 3 tips which I hope will be helpful. The first tip is actually a phrase you can use. It's a phrase that Stephen used when he was looking for Ashley. He said, "It took me ages to find you." It took me ages to find you. What does it mean? Well, ages means a long time, a very long time actually. But we use it informally to mean a long time, which is all relative, isn't it? So a long time when you're looking for somebody might actually only be a few minutes. A long time in terms of writing a book or traveling a long distance could be very different. It could be months, weeks, years even. Who knows? So ages, to take ages, really useful phrase. And of course, you can use it to talk about things in the past, in the present, in the future, hypothetically. So it's going to take me ages to finish my homework. It would take me ages to do that. Very useful phrase. My second tip is actually not about a piece of language, but an approach to learning a language. And I'll tell you a word which we use to describe this approach, and that is noticing. And it comes from the verb to notice, which more or less means to see something or to hear something or to read something, to notice it, to be aware of it, to know of it. Now, why is noticing important? Noticing can be really important for you as a language learner because you can start to hear the language you study or read the language you study or see the language you study in use by other people. So you can, for example, after watching this video, perhaps have your radar switched on to listen for people or look for people using the phrase take ages. And when you start to hear it more often, then you will feel more comfortable with its meaning and also its structure. So noticing really helps like that, really helps the learning process. It's even better if you can start to compare how other people use that language to how you use that language. So then you're noticing the difference or the similarity, if it's the same, between other people using that language and you. Essentially, I did this earlier and talked about a radar. That's what it is. It's like you have your English radar always switched on, always ready to hear or to see a word or a phrase that perhaps you've studied recently, or perhaps you've only recently discovered in English. It's interesting actually. A lot of my students say after they've learned a new word or a new phrase, they say that they hear it all the time or they see it all the time, and that is because they're starting to notice that language. And I think it's a really positive thing, a really positive approach to interacting with English. Okay, the third tip in this video is about a word, and it's a word which Stephen used when he was looking for the group of dancers to practice with. He went outside, he saw the group, and he said to one of the guys, "Excuse me, mate. Excuse me, mate." What does that mean? Well, excuse me, you know what that means. Mate, or mate, I'll come to pronunciation in a moment. It more or less means the same as friend. It's really informal. All right, so not something, probably not a word that you need to use actually, but it's one which it's good to know, because when you're listening to natural conversation, especially from the UK, Australia, and maybe New Zealand as well, you might hear this word, mate, 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 quite a lot in conversation, in formal conversation. So you need to notice it, look out for it, listen for it, and hopefully you'll understand its use a bit better. Something else that's interesting, as I said, I would come back to it, and that is the pronunciation. Because if you look in a dictionary and you find the word mate, probably the pronunciation will be like I just said, mate, with the t sound at the end. But in reality, if you listen to Stephen in the Word on the Street episode, or if you listen to me when I speak to a friend, I normally say, "Hello, mate." Hello, mate. Not hello, mate, but hello, mate. And that's quite an interesting feature of spoken English, where we basically remove the t sound from some words, and it's almost like we start to say the t sound, but we don't actually say it. Mate. Words with the same spelling, like late, you can also do the same. Late. Sorry I'm late. Sorry I'm late. Okay? For me, it's more natural to say, sorry I'm late. Gate. Gate. For me, it's more natural not to say the t sound. Again, this isn't something you have to do. This isn't something which is going to help you communicate better in English, but I think it's a really interesting feature, and it can help you perhaps understand informal spoken language better, particularly, as I said, in those two countries definitely, and maybe New Zealand as well, Australia and the UK above all. All right, that was the third tip in this video, and I'm going to stop there. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them on the Facebook page, and remember that we will have a live Q&A at the end of this series, so look out for that. And if you've got questions about any of these tips or something completely different, you can ask them for that Q&A as well.